Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We have a great agenda for the evening. We're going to have Councilmember Mulcahy give us a little neighborhood update. We have Captain Tran here to give us a safety update. Our Assemblymember Gail Pellerin is here this evening, our guest of honor. We are also going to have Supervisor Ellenberg come and tell us about the H1 adjustments they've made to the county budget. So before I pass this over to the council member, I want to talk a little bit about our commitment to a respectful community space. So our shared commitment is to respect the speaker's flow. So if the speaker that comes up is fine with questions in the middle of their presentation, they'll let you know that. If they would prefer that you wait and hold questions to the end, that's fine too. So whichever the speaker lets you know in the beginning, we will honor that. Please keep comments brief so that everybody can participate. We're going to lead with curiosity, ask questions or offer ideas, and avoiding personal criticism. We're going to stay constructive, focusing on solutions, shared understanding and not blame, and assume good intent. Disagree respectfully with ideas and not people. So we'll keep those in mind for tonight. I am going to ask the speakers to use a microphone because we are recording for this evening and we put it on YouTube. So even though I know we can hear each other in a room without, this way we'll get good sound for the video. So I will pass it over to our council member.
Okay, I'll use the microphone. Hi everybody, how are you? So this is Jessica Hellman, who works in my office. Jessica is a WIllow Glen Ram, born and raised in the district. And we're gonna do a little floor show for you. And we're gonna do a combination of things that are gonna be both interesting to you in the neighborhood, sort of generally overall, because this association covers a pretty broad geography, but also some things that are more specific to Lincoln Avenue and some of the things that we've been experiencing there as well. So Jessica's going to start off and talk about the road resurfacing along Lincoln Avenue. And we're going to leave a few minutes at the end for questions, but I know you've got a full agenda. And we do hear from many of you regularly, and you know where to find us if we don't get to the topic you're interested in this evening. And then the real best part of our presentation is that we will bring up the famous Captain Tran, who's sitting over here in the second row, who will give us an update on some things that we've sort of preloaded based on some of the trends that we're hearing through our office on email, voicemail, etc. Okay, so Jessica, take over.
Yes, our continued conversation of Lincoln Avenue resurfacing. I feel like I've talked about this for the past 5 months, but it's really exciting because it's completely resurfaced. I just drove a big chunk of it to get here. It's really nice. You're probably wondering, okay, where are the stripes? The restriping will be completed November 17th. The department will be putting in, or the contractor will be putting in some cap tracking, which is temporary striping, and then the geometrics team will review that, and then they'll put in the final restriping. So that's really exciting, and hopefully we will have a fully refurnished Lincoln Avenue pretty soon. So that's it.
Well, and so whether you are, going to where the businesses on the avenue, use it to, get through the neighborhood or whatever. We know that there was some short-term pain, but as Jessica said, just drove it. It feels very good. We spent a ton of time in the Department of Transportation trying to get it right, including while they were actually doing the what do they call it when they take the milling, where they were sort of not getting too close to a certain one of our parklets, right? And so we didn't want it to look ugly at the end, so we really got out there and asked them to get as close as possible, so we had a pretty project at the end. So those of you that participated on our cleanup at Co and Lincoln, so this was sort of part of a months-long project where we did a cleanup at Co and Lincoln, and we were going to do the resurfacing, restriping, and then we were going to come back and do the painting of the Co Lincoln Bridge And thanks to former Councilmember Pierluigi Oliverio, who had the underpass at 280, those columns painted, which are not looking great in graffiti, those are also going to get painted over the next 4 to 5 weeks. We've had a little bit of an issue getting the money from the city to the Glen Riviera Neighborhood Association. We fixed that, so we'll get the contractor out there pretty quickly. So I think we're going to have a nice improvement there. Additionally, in that section between Co and 280, it's been looking a little junky even after we did the work. And so we just met with the Beautify SJ, Beautify San Jose team about getting after some of the issues that we're facing between Co and 280, so that when we do this painting, that we've got a little bit of a better aesthetic overall. So just wanted to give you the update on that. And thanks to those of you who were able to come out to that cleanup, because we'll continue to do those, and you're going to hear more about that now.
Yes, we have another cleanup this weekend on November 1st at 9 a.m. We're going to be doing a cleanup at the intersection of Almond Road and Kirtner Avenue. We'll be partnering with District 9, Vice Mayor Pam Foley will be there, and the South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition. It'll be a trash cleanup as well as a creek cleanup. You can RSVP through scanning the QR code, or you can message us and we can get you on there. It should be a pretty great event. We're excited. There will be another cleanup November 22nd. The mayor will be, and Councilmember Mulcahy will be cleaning up at Columbus Park, Guadalupe River Trail beautification at 9 a.m. on November 22nd, also Saturday. And with all those cleanups, we want to open it up to you guys and where you think we need more cleanups, and it doesn't have to be a huge area. It can be kind of any little intersection that you think needs a little bit more love. Just send us an email. I have a running list of different ideas and places in the district, and that extends beyond WIllow Glen, of course. So always eager to hear what you guys have to say and where you would like to see improvements.
Yeah, so we've been focused on some of the waterways and things like that, and especially in areas like you think like Curtin around Denver. Why are you doing it there? Well, if you drove by there right now, you know, there's nobody paying any attention to it. So what you don't see is how dirty the creek is below it, and it's a really important creek, and it's really important to keep them clean. And what's happening is, of the areas around it, there's a lot of weeds and things like that. We think we can do a nicer job of cleaning that up. So we're trying to attack some of our gateways. That's a gateway into District 6, and it's also a gateway into District 9, which is why Councilmember Foley is partnering with us. So we're doing that. The other thing is, you know, there's been a lot going on up in the Columbus Park, kind of North Guadalupe River Park and Gardens area. If you haven't been up there for a while, I mean, Larry, I don't know if you take your bike up there, it's like a completely different experience being on the Guadalupe Trail these days, especially north out of downtown. And so we're going to continue to get after it and try to keep that so that our community has a great resource out there. Want to tell them about the intern?
Yes, we will be launching an application for a spring intern. We're still finishing up kind of the program and the application, so it should be coming out soon, so keep your eyes open. And also if you have any ideas for some young folks who are trying to get experience, we're looking for someone who will inevitably be touching all areas, because that's how council offices work. It's really fun. But more specifically in the media, public communication, and sort of community engagement.
We are looking for someone that drives and someone that is not a minor. Okay, so if you have anybody in mind, it's college age for the most part, seniors in high school, please let us know. So you have your former WIllow Glen Neighborhood Association president, Deanna Merzadigian, was appointed as the District 6 Arts Council liaison. Arts Commission liaison. She has been doing a fantastic job. One of the things in the appointments that I'm trying to do is to make sure that I appoint people from the district. Really important. So if you know people that are interested in commissions and they need a little help to decide what ones might be available, we're happy to help guide them. Deanna has been showing up in all the right places, going to other neighborhood associations, talking about what's going on with the Arts Commission, and she has organized through kind of quasi-WIllow Glen Neighborhood Association and her work on the commission. One of the things that I heard as much or more than anything, especially in the neighborhood around Minnesota, is why does Station 6 Fire Station look like nobody cares about it? So we have been jumping through hoops for the last 4 months trying to get approval to do a volunteer project to landscape the entire Minnesota frontage. I think Mary Fox has been involved in that and others in this room, and we want to say thank you. We're getting close. We don't have a date, but we hope that we can help mobilize you to come out and help pretty up the fire station. We'll have firefighters out there cooking something, and so it'll be a great community event. Oh yeah, stickers, firefighter stickers for sure. Okay. I think the other thing before we go to some questions, oh yeah, we're going to do some grand openings. But before I do that, I'll tell you that your special guest, Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, and I will be doing a coffee together on November 15th at the WIllow Glen Community Center, 1:30 to 3, open to anybody. Her district is bigger than mine, but we will be promoting that through our District 6 office and hope that you'll be able to attend there. We won't be doing a floor show tonight, but we will there, right? Okay. And then Jessica's going to tell you now about some of the businesses that have opened on Lincoln Avenue and kind of in the general vicinity beyond Lincoln Avenue, and there have been a lot. So Jessica's going to tell you those.
Yeah, it's super exciting. A lot of these are businesses that we kind of notice or through word of mouth hear about. So if you see a new business or know of a new business that's opening soon, let us know. It's a really fun way that we get to welcome and celebrate these new businesses, small local businesses, into our community. It's a great experience. It's one of my favorite things that we've done. I think we've done about 20, I think we've organized about 23 since January. But last month was really fun. We started out with The Well, right on Grace off of Lincoln. It's a new Pilates studio. It's opened by this young woman who is one of Councilmember's daughter's good friends from high school.
Grew up in the district.
She is, yes, District 6. It's a great space, so if you know anyone who's interested in Pilates, please go and check it out. We also have Loconda. Iskia. Loconda Iskia. Which...
Right here, Luigi? That's right, Iskia.
Perfect. They've been open for some time. They closed because they had some issues with some leakages. But we did get to celebrate their grand opening, so go check them out. Great space. We also have Gal and Glen and Sprouted Twig, which is 2 businesses in one. So that was also really exciting. They are, oh gosh, I don't know the exact address.
Right across from the old burger.
1314, yes, awesome. Yeah, right, also a couple doors down from Wakanda, they're doing some cool wreath making events, so go check them out. We also have Aldia Home and Baby, just opened, and they're based out of San Francisco, so it's really fun.
Next to Phil's Coffee.
Next to Phil's Coffee. Thank you, that's fun. So they're also a cool business that you should go check out. And then we have another one that is not on Lincoln Avenue, but is very close by, Mad Yolks on Meridian Avenue, in that sort of shopping center.
Meridian and WIllow next to Starbucks.
Mad Yolks is a restaurant. So this restaurant is based out of Santa Cruz. Yeah, so it's 2 brothers and they have started this business and they really wanted to come and serve in this area. So we're also really excited. They're focused on bringing high quality, fresh ingredients. I've heard it's great. So also go check them out. I think that's all.
Yeah, so I'll just finish up. So, I think Captain Tran's going to talk about some of the safety challenges that we're experiencing. And I think Lincoln Avenue, just generally speaking, we've got some great new businesses with a lot of new energy in those businesses, but we need to help our small businesses on Lincoln Avenue do better. and we got to show some loyalty, and we're trying to figure out ways that we can help spur that. We're hoping doing things like, street repaving and some of the cleanups we're doing are going to spark people's interest to get back out and, give those businesses your business. So we're going to continue to sort of drumbeat that, and we're going to grand open as many businesses in the district as we can and promote the heck out of them. So I'm going to invite Captain Tran up, and maybe while he's doing that, I can take a couple of questions. And if they're sort of safety oriented, we can shift them over to Captain Tran, who's going to help us do that. Yes, Your Honor.
Councilmember, I just want to say thank you for putting in a letter opposing SB 79. That was something that the association also put in a letter to oppose. It adversely affects single-family homes by converting them up to 85 feet. It's something that's pretty serious that the neighborhood association is concerned about because there's no public hearings and no community meetings.
Thank you. One of the other things that we just did with Cortese and bill got signed was dealing with our abandoned shopping carts. One of the, you go to Cohen Lincoln right now after our cleanup, there were, over the course of the 3 weeks afterwards, there was another shopping cart, sitting there. And we had to fight with the Grocers Association of California to essentially change state law to allow the city of San Jose not to have to go hold those shopping carts when we found them or pulled them out of a creek for 30 days until a grocery store came to claim them. So we can actually deal with them. We're going to get a report, I think, next week at one of our committees to determine, how that program is, how effective it is in terms of the resources we put out. But we had 2,000 shopping carts strewn about our city, many of them in our creeks, which cause all kinds of issues from the environment, but also the backups and the trash buildup and everything else. So, we were involved in, I went up and testified in Sacramento and very proud and got to chat with Gail Pellerin at that time as well. So, thank you for bringing up SB 79. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How do we get a hold of you?
I knew someone would ask this question, so that's why I brought a bunch of my business cards in my pocket. I can give you one right after this, and I'll also leave some on the table.
So, but when in doubt, this is the best address. This goes to 6 people, including me. And we triage the emails that come in. So if somebody's already working on something that, is already known to the office, because look, the reality is you don't know who's communicating with us even next door to you, right? So it's up to us to figure out how to triage the intake that we have and make sure that we're maybe informing you that, oh, hey, your neighbor just brought this up, we're on it. The other thing I would say is we need to hear from you relative to issues, especially if there are things that are some of the low-hanging fruit things like trash on the side of the road, right? The more difficult ones are lived-in vehicles and encampments. There's a whole other shooting match for that, but we still want to know about it. We still need you to go on 311, even if you've told us about it, because that's where the data collection is happening. But we want to hear from you if you've got some issues. We can't help if we don't know. And the other thing is, sometimes you're driving by too fast and you see a street light that's out. Sometimes you should just pull over and take the 5 digits right there on that street pole and send them to us if you don't know how to use the 311 app. We have to help each other solve problems. I do it like too many times a day to the staff. I'll send one of those data points I collect for us to go get fixed. We need to hear from you. So that's the best address. If you want to talk to Jessica, jessica.hellman at the same at sanjoseca.gov.
You can also send it to both. That's also helpful.
Okay, next up we have our Assemblymember Gail Pellerin. So come on up. I'll give you the remote. Bring it on.
while she's getting that together, let me just start by saying thanks so much for inviting me here today. It's great to have our council member, Mulcahy, here. Look forward to hearing Susan Ellenberg, our county supervisor, speak as well. And just a shout out to my field representative. We got Lauren here today, and Adrian is our new intern that's in the office. So I just met him today. So just a little bit about me. I ran for this office in November of 22. But before that, I served 27 plus years as the chief elections official, county clerk, registrar of voters in Santa Cruz County. And in the process of serving as the county clerk, I really focus on removing barriers for voting, making sure everybody has access, making sure our vote count was accurate and transparent and accessible. And I retired from that position in December of 2020, but I was working with some local women's groups on getting more women into leadership positions in elected office. And we had never elected a woman from Santa Cruz County to any office higher than countywide. So we set out to change that. And in the process of doing that, I talked to a number of women and said, hey, are you interested in running for state assembly? They'd say, no, but how about you? I'd find another woman to talk to, are you interested? And she'd say, no, but how about you? And I ended up running for office, and our current incumbent, Mark Stone, had decided not to run for his last term. I ran, and I was elected. So, do I hit the middle button?
It'll be the one on the right.
The one on the right, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. So, that's a little bit of my history there, earned my degree from Cal Poly in San Luis, where the motto is learn by doing, and that's come in great handy as I'm serving as your state legislator. So a little bit about the district. We're roughly 500,000 constituents. Our population is 473,000. Most of our voters are over here in Santa Clara County. It's about a 30-70 split. And the cities that I represent include parts of San Jose, Los Gatos, Montessorino, Morgan Hill, Santa Cruz, and Scotts Valley. So the map of the district is this. So I start in the, so right here's the harbor in Santa Cruz. I go north of the county line. I go through the valley. I go over the summit. I take in Los Gatos, Montessorino, go up to Cambrian, down the Coyote Valley, Almana Valley, Coyote Valley, Morgan Hill, and then through this lovely vine country here. And then I take in a little bit of Corralitos. I go through the forest of Nicey Marks back to the harbor. So I think the district looks like a fist. And that's what I'm channeling, that I'm fighting for you when I'm in Sacramento. And, that's a little bit tweaked out, but, so my committees, I am chair of the Assembly Elections Committee, which makes sense, getting my background. And I also serve on the Appropriations Committee, Business and Professions, Natural Resources, Privacy, and Consumer Protection. I'm also the chair of the Select Committee. So we have our policy committees, which I'm a member of, and then we have select committees that do more, they don't hear bills, they do more stakeholder engagement, hold hearings around the state to get information about these various issues. So I'm chair of the Select Committee on California's mental health crisis. We're going to be holding a hearing in Sacramento on December 2nd on that. I'm also sit on the Child Care Costs Select Committee. I know that is important to our county supervisor here as well. And effective post-secondary career technical education and workforce development programs, reproductive health, and youth mental health and treatment accessibility. And then in 2025, my legislative priorities, I passed 10 bills on to the governor, and I'm happy to report all 10 bills were signed into law. So those included a deposit transfer bill to help out our renters if they are paying for their security deposit using electronic means like Venmo, then the landlord has to return it in that same fashion. So that gets the money back into that tenant's pocket when they're trying to move on to another place to live. The California Association of Nurse Practitioners came to me with this bill, AB 583, about death certificates to allow them to sign on to a death certificate. And this was something that personally impacted me as well. When my father died, the doctor was on vacation and we had nobody to sign off on his death certificate. So we ended up holding his funeral without having just, dealt with his body and made those final decisions. So it was a little bit complicated and very emotional time for us. So this bill allows nurse practitioners to sign off on death certificates so people don't have to wait. This AB 679 is a bill that this is my third time doing this. I'm very persistent in legislation. If there's a cause and a piece of policy that I believe in strongly, I'm going to keep hearing it till I get it enacted into law. And that's what happened with the state parks land acquisition. So this expedites land transfers from a nonprofit that's purchased parcels to transfer them to state parks for ongoing stewardship, trail maintenance, wildfire prevention efforts, the continuity of the parks. And of course that this impacts directly the Big Basin Park that was destroyed by the CZU fires in 2020. So this is going to allow them to reimagine that park and provide better continuity. And then I have a bill that was signed into law on digital staging. So it requires that if you are virtually staging a real estate listing, meaning that what happened was my former chief of staff was looking to move to the Central Valley. She was looking at the listings. This place looked beautiful and wonderful. She took her 3 kids. She drove the 3 hours down there, went to the home, and the beautiful kitchen that they had posted did not exist. It was basically a shell. It had none of the beautiful land, the island and the cabinets and the new appliances. So we're just saying that that needs to be labeled, that if you're going to be virtually staging a household, you need to provide the original photo and then label the ones that are virtually staged. And then AB 996 was actually a Central Coast Caucus priority bill as well that allows our coastal communities that are having to submit their local coastal plans to be able to do it early on with the Coastal Commission. So at the end, when they're finally due, it's a more streamlined process. And then I have a bill on providing uniform standards for voters if they make a mistake on the ballot. Rather than having to get a replacement ballot, we're going to have uniform standards on how to correct that. And where's the next one? And then I worked with a local solar company, Stetter Solar, that there was difficulty in small businesses getting solar because they had to register as an awarding body, and that created a lot of paperwork that really slowed down their desire to want to do this. So this bill is going to streamline that and exempt them from that, so hopefully we'll get more small businesses that will want to put in solar. And then we have a number of what we call Assembly Elections Committee bills. As the chair, if it's a unanimous bill that both caucuses support, we can typically get those through on consent. So I did one that did some technical changes to the Political Reform Act. A simple one on the bond issue. There's a requirement that you had to write bonds yes, bonds no, and it was very inconsistent, so we're just going to have it be a simple yes, no. And then election procedures for certified mail and then some cleanup to the recall of trial court judges. And then I have a couple bills that we're calling 2-year bills. So these are bills that we're sailing through, but then they kind of met a bump. And so we're going to continue to work on these bills when we come back to the legislature in January. One is on housing voucher preference to allow landlords to have a preference for housing voucher holders. Another one I'm working on is related to my deepfakes bill. You know, AI is getting so much better and more accessible to everybody, and I'm really concerned about the use of AI around elections, where they're using elections officials or elected officials saying and doing things that they have not said or done, just to try to wreak havoc in an election. So we have a cleanup bill to that we're continuing to work on. And then I have a bill that I was working on with the city of Santa Cruz that prohibits jurisdictions from transporting unsheltered persons from one jurisdiction to another without coordination. And so this bill we're going to continue to pursue this next year. And then I have a bill I've been working on with Janice that would streamline the licensing and certification process for substance use disorder facilities that are like a campus style, but they have a number of different programs offered on one location. A lot was going on in the budget. You've heard about it. We've been in really dire straits on the state budget, and we did reject cuts to social services, Planned Parenthood, women's health clinics. We really fought to keep funding for UC and CSU systems. We increased funding for the K-12 education, including what was so super important is those universal school meals. And we know now that with the SNAP program, people losing their benefits, I mean, feeding people is going to become a real priority in the days and weeks and months ahead. We were able to increase pay for childcare providers. We worked with providing money for public safety to support survivors. This was a big push for me to increase personnel to prevent the future wildfires. So it's no longer seasonal, but year-round wildfire support. And with no new taxes on families, individuals, while reducing some taxes for military retirees. And some budget wins I want to point out: the Healthy School Food Pathway. Again, that was so critically important to provide support for the food professionals preparing healthy meals for our students. Diaper banks, that's been an issue I've championed for a couple of years now. Our food banks some of them have been able to serve also as a diaper bank distribution, and this is something critically needed by families, so we got money for that. There's 11 distributors in the state. And then we got money for the Santa Cruz County Public Library as they are providing a new library facility in Santa Cruz. We also got money for the My California Vax system, and that's an important tool that we use to track vaccine supply and distribution. Also got some money for acupuncture through Medi-Cal, and we got money for our support nonprofits, performing arts organizations, and ensuring that they can continue to provide the services that they do. We were talking about the victims of crime, the firefighter transition, and then just really trying to support our Bay Area transit agencies that are up against a fiscal cliff right now, and getting some money into them was a top priority for us. And I've done a lot of work in the Adverse Childhood Experiences, the ACEs Aware program. This is a critical tool to identify issues that would screen kids to make sure that they get the services they need if they've experienced any kind of trauma or mental health challenges. Also got money for the California Parkinson's Disease Registry. And then, so suicide prevention awareness and mental health, these are issues that have profoundly impacted my family. And it was November of 2018 when my husband of 25 years died by suicide. And that rocked our family to our core. And it was a lot I didn't understand about suicide, and I set out on a mission to understand it more, to understand mental health, and to be a voice and a face for suicide prevention and awareness. So I joined the NAMI board over in Santa Cruz County. I also work with the NAMI board here. We did the overnight walk in San Francisco, where you walk 16.4 miles from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Those are hours I normally like to sleep, but we were raising money for suicide awareness, and it was just one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life, being out there on the streets of San Francisco with people who either have experienced the loss of a loved one to suicide or had attempted suicide themselves. So every year I do a resolution on the assembly floor talking about my experience, and it's so incredible to see other members stand up and talk about their own suicidal thoughts that maybe they have had, or a family member. And this year we also brought experts together as well and held a press conference to really make people aware of how important this issue is. And it's the second leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 25. So it's something and it doesn't discriminate. It impacts families, communities, workforces everywhere. So just continuing to draw attention to that. And then I also hold a care fair every September, which is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And we honor mental health heroes in Assembly District 28. So these are people doing the incredible work in our communities, providing mental health services. And we bring them out for a day with resources and fun activities and tacos. Everything's good if you bring a taco. And we give them a resolution honoring them and talk about the work that they do. And then other events I do, we always love welcoming schools coming to the Capitol. That's always a favorite day of mine when we have school children come in. We had scouting troop come as well. We always honor a nonprofit of the year every year. This last year I did the Homeless Garden Project. We've got, students of the college coming up. We've got diversity center folks. Our firefighters come to the Capitol as well. We get law enforcement coming up. And other events that I hold in this district is I do an event called Community Conversations, where we schedule one-on-one time where I'm out throughout the community having 10-minute conversations with people. I have my dog Darwin, and we do an event called Pause and Policy, where we go to dog parks and people can bring their dogs or not, but it's a good opportunity to be outside and connect. Every March we honor Women of the Year from throughout the district, and these are all nominations that come from you. It comes from the constituents as far as who you would like to see honored, and we hold events there every year in March. And then taking care of business is something that I do where I go out to a district, like I've been out here to WIllow Glen a couple times, where I've met with the business association, and we go in and we talk to various businesses, learn about what their concerns are and how the state can be more helpful to them. Got a newsletter here. We're happy to have you sign up for that to receive all the latest and greatest news from 8028. And then this is a way that you can contact the office. We have an office over here on Almond and Expressway, just 10 minutes from here. The Santa Cruz District Office. We got a little satellite office in Morgan Hill. And then, of course, the Capitol office as well. And so that's all our phone numbers and ways to reach out to us. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Looking forward to another year serving you in Sacramento. We're currently preparing our legislative package for 2026. So if you have legislative ideas that you're interested in, I would be love to hear from them. And just as Councilmember Mulcahy said, we need to hear from you. I love hearing from constituents when it comes to legislation, because I have a member portfolio, and when I hear from the district on measures that are a problem to you, I see that when I'm voting, and that's really critically important. So yes, I got the message about SB 79, and I did not support SB 79 because we had overwhelming concern from the community on that bill. And if you have other concerns with the state agency, EDD, DMV, any of the state agencies, we're here to help, so please give us a call. And I look forward to getting to know you more and serving you as your state assembly member. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Two questions, if that's all right. So on SB 79, when I looked up, it came to the committee twice and the assembly twice, or once, so 3 times, and each time you were absent. So my question is, then you're saying now you're recording an official no vote that you oppose SB 79?
I stayed off the bill. I was not voting. I abstained. I had worked with Senator Wiener. He did take a couple of my amendments that I needed him to take. So he did work with me on it, so instead of coming out as a no, I just stayed off the bill.
Okay, so
I want to continue to work with him, and that keeps good relationships going.
Fair enough. I think then as an association, we were hoping for a no vote on SB 79, just to be clear, and our council member sent in a letter on that. So I think it's just important to us on how to affect, because Santa Cruz is exempt.
Yeah.
It's Santa Clara County, it's San Jose, it's the Palm Haven neighborhood, which is a historic neighborhood here. You can literally take a single family home and go up to 85 feet. And it's approved by right under SB 79.
Yeah.
So it's not insignificant.
Right, and I have definite concerns about removing the local control for those housing decisions.
Well, I hope you'll reconsider a no vote or modifying that, because it's going to be a dramatic change. The second vote is the Capitol Annex project for the state capitol. That was approved in 2018. This is a renovation of the Capitol building. At that time in 2018, it was $541 million. In 2022, the update came that it was $1.1 billion. It's not supposed to be complete until 2027, but the Assembly will not provide the latest numbers on how much it costs. And the KCRA, the News Bureau in Sacramento, called this out because neither Rivas or McGuire, I think that's the name of the state senate, will actually discuss it, and it's all non-disclosures. Do you think the public, the constituents in your district, have a right to know how much that project is over budget?
Absolutely. They have a right to know what it's going to cost. Absolutely.
So it'd be great if you would ask the question and let us know.
Yeah.
because it's a significant amount of money.
Yeah, we'll check into it.
Sorry about the hard questions,
Yeah,
but they are really pertinent.
And, you know, I'll be lucky if I ever get to be in that space, so we'll see. But, and of course, all those decisions were made before I was elected,
But you can make that number public now.
We'll definitely look into it.
Thank you so much, really appreciate it, thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
So my question is, where should I go for this particular issue? I noticed you were consumer protection, and I recently installed a heating system and some fans in the attic and all this other stuff. The bill came at $30,000, which of course I signed off on, and it's part of, you know, fixing your house. But at the same time this work was going on, there was an article that came out, and the article said the new millionaires are HVAC people. And the reason they said this is because, yeah, the reason they said this is because corporations are buying out family operations. And so, the thing that I thought of is, you know, there was a time when mechanics, when they fixed your cars, they were very loose on the bill and documenting the work, hours, parts, that kind of thing. And I thought, shouldn't that be the same thing with HVAC? And I'll just give you one example of my project. One day, one guy put shielding inside the attic to reflect heat and back into the house. And it was $6,000 for one person, and that was a line item, $6,000 for one person. There's no way this foil that they put in there was worth that kind of money. So there's a need for consumers to know the details.
Yeah.
Should I send that to you, or who would I?
Yeah, Lauren would be happy to
Okay.
get the information, and then we can follow up to see whether there's a Department of Consumer Affairs in the state. There's also the District Attorney's Office that has protections for consumers, so we can find the right place to go with that concern.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, you know how to reach me, and it was great being here today, and I'm going to stick around and listen to our county supervisor.
We have just one more question. If you
Oh,
don't
sure.
mind.
Hi, thank you so much for being here tonight. One of the things I've been concerned about as a parent is what's happening with school safety in our local schools. And something that we found in our research is that the comprehensive school safety plans that are required for schools to have are actually not enforceable. Because what made them enforceable was the No Child Left Behind Act. And so when that was no longer in place, the enforceability of the CSSPs went away. So I would love your civic suggestion on who we could work with to look into that, to have that rectified.
We'll definitely take a look at that as well. I'm guessing that, you know, we'll probably make a call to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurman, as well, and find out how to turn that around.
That would be great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, if you think of something later, give us a call, please. Information's up there, send us an email, and we're happy to help. Thanks.
Great, Assemblymember, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Okay, next up we have Supervisor Susan Ellenberg.
I'm usually not trusted with advancing my own slides, so I'm sure Victor is now nervous. Good evening. I think I recognize nearly all of you, so always nice to be back in WIllow. I've actually spent a lot of time here recently, and we'll be back tomorrow for the trick-or-treat youngest kids, the 0 to 5s that are coming out from 11 to 12:30. So always enjoy fun times in WIllow. What I'm going to talk about now is absolutely not fun, but is top of mind. So let's get into that. Failing already. Here we go. So my story starts with the passage of what Trump calls his one big beautiful bill, also called H.R. 1. He signed this bill into law on July 4th, 2025, And what this bill does is, over a decade, seeks to pull $1 trillion out of the public health and safety systems that have helped low-income families, adults, children, older adults, for decades. The biggest program that is being cut, or that is having money pulled from it, is Medicaid. The second largest is SNAP, and in fact we have a different crisis looming next week with SNAP, if I can divert for a quick second. As a result of the government shutdown continuing, there will be no funding allocated for SNAP for CalFresh beginning November 1st. So separate from HR 1, we are really at the heels of a very major food crisis, a food access crisis across the country, and certainly one that will be felt here. Public health programs have already been cut by HR 1, and there are a number of other safety net programs. I want to just set the stage for the longevity of these programs. Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, and many of these other social programs were created during the Johnson administration. And they have lasted and grown at various speeds through Republican and Democrat administrations. And since the 1960s, we, meaning both residents at large and folks in local government, have come to expect that we can rely on our federal government in its size and scope to continue to provide supports for the very poorest residents in our communities to stave off, they're called safety net services, to stave off the deepest impacts of poverty. That has now been turned on its heels without precedent. Without precedent, cuts of this size are catching local governments across the country by surprise, and certainly inducing some degree of panic. They bring $1 trillion over a decade to what that looks like in Santa Clara County. In the last few years, Santa Clara County has received about $3.5 billion in federal funds for our safety net services. We're a pass-through. It's not as if the government receives them. We take in the money and then it goes out to recipients to pay for care, to pay for food, to pay for other support services. Of the $3.5 billion, $2.5 billion has been in the form of Medicaid reimbursements for the care that we provide to people who are at the income level that qualifies them to receive Medicaid health insurance. Let me talk about why that number, that $2.5 billion in Medicaid reimbursements looks like it does. South Bay Hospital landscape. Currently, Santa Clara County owns and operates 4 major hospitals of the 10 hospitals that are in our county, 15 smaller clinics scattered throughout the county, and we partner with a number of community-based organizations to provide specific specialty health care to particular communities. Say a couple of words about our healthcare system, because very often there's a presumption, if you don't use the services, that somehow county hospitals are the place of care for last resort if you don't have any other options. That is not the case with our county system. Santa Clara County Valley Medical Center operates one of only 3 regional burn trauma centers between Los Angeles and the Oregon border. For 9 counties around, if somebody suffers a burn trauma, they're coming to our hospital. In 2024, Valley Medical Center saw the highest number of trauma cases in the entire state. Our hospital system trains 1 in 4 physicians practicing anywhere in the county. We have the #1 in the state, I think #7 in the country, rehabilitation center for spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. We operate the only fully open-door cancer center, the Sobrato Cancer Center, and we diagnose and treat about 1,000 patients every year. Regardless of what your insurance may be and what your primary hospital of choice is, if you need gallbladder surgery or something else that you schedule, if you experience some kind of traumatic accident or injury or other high-level emergent issue, chances are more than 80% that you are coming to one of our hospitals. There are 2 level 1 trauma centers in Santa Clara County. One is at Valley, the other is at Stanford. We also have a level 2 trauma center, and that is at Regional Medical Center. This is the number of beds at each of our hospitals. I can't walk around with that. Now I feel like a club singer. So I will do a very, very quick history of how we came to these hospitals. For decades, for about 40 years, Santa Clara County owned and operated one hospital, Valley Medical Center on Bascom, which you may be familiar with. And that was working generally well. We received the bulk of revenue to operate that hospital through Medicaid. We also received funding from Medicare for patients and commercial insurance and the county's own insurance project. In 2026, if you'll remember, Daughters of Charity that owned O'Connor Hospital in West San Jose and St. Louis Regional Center in Gilroy. They also owned several other hospitals across the county. They sold all of their hospitals. These were, again, Daughters of Charity, big portions of Medicaid patients. They sold all of their hospitals to a private hedge fund called Verity. It took Verity 2 years to drive all of those hospitals into bankruptcy. Which was their goal from the beginning: sell the equipment, repurpose the real estate, get out of the business. I would say make a killing, but that's very bad taste if I'm talking about hospitals. So we looked, I wasn't on the board yet, I was actually running for the office in 2018. We looked at what the impact would be of losing 358 beds at O'Connor, who had been largely Medicaid patients and Medicare. Where were they going to go? Very likely to Valley, because that is the closest hospital. And if we lost another 93 beds in the south part of the county, there was really no major comprehensive hospital between San Jose and Monterey. San Benito has 2 tiny hospitals, the second of which is about to close. So we made an offer in bankruptcy to purchase those hospitals. We were the only entity that made an offer.
That is not Prime Healthcare made an offer in Southern California.
For our 2 or for the whole thing? Thank you for clarifying.
For O'Connor Hospital. I was on the city council
Okay.
last time.
I am clarifying. Thank you very much. We were the best offer in bankruptcy. Happy to correct that. Kept those 2 hospitals open. What that did was not only save this number of beds, but saved jobs, continued to bring millions of dollars into the economy through reimbursement for care, kept the economy in a more solid position. That sale closed in April of 2019, and just kind of imagine with me for a moment, if 10 months later, in the beginnings of COVID, if we had had nearly 500 fewer beds. Obviously, we can't take credit for amping up for the pandemic, but I'm certainly glad in retrospect that we had them. We saw something similar happening with Regional Medical Center in 2023. Regional was owned by HCA, which is the largest for-profit hospital corporation in the country. They own hundreds of hospitals across the country. In our county, they used to own San Jose Medical Center. They closed that, San Jose Medical, San Jose Community Hospital. They closed that about 25 years ago. And they owned Good Sam in West San Jose, the border of Los Gatos. and Regional Medical Center in East San Jose. Apparently they had a decent mix of patient population at Good Sam, lots of commercial insurance providers, and were doing okay financially. In Regional, where most of the patients were Medicaid eligible or Medicaid recipients, they were losing money. The first thing they did to try to contain costs was close their labor and delivery services. A year later, because that didn't reduce their costs enough, they reduced the level of trauma, heart attack, and stroke to which they would respond. Doctors were leaving, nurses were leaving, patients were fleeing, ambulances were having to go further for folks from East San Jose to get to Stanford, to get to Kaiser Hospital, or to get to Valley. We again saw an opportunity to bring this hospital back to the level of service that the East San Jose community deserved. Our 3 hospitals are operating at near capacity, and unlike O'Connor and St. Louis, which have been largely run into the ground, Regional is an excellent piece of real estate, recently seismically upgraded, good property, good office buildings. And again, here we made an offer, which they took so quickly. We actually offered them more a year prior, which they didn't take. Second time we made an offer for less money, they took it. And the reason again is that it is very, very expensive to provide health care for poor people. And it is very, almost impossible to make a profit. The reason that the county is able to operate these hospitals and again, keep the jobs, keep the revenue, keep a stronger economy, is because we are able to supplement, to create a bridge with general funds, which come from your local property taxes, to make up the difference between what Medicaid reimburses and the actual cost of care. We're going to see the result of HR 1, hospitals closing across the country. We've already seen 3 rural hospitals in California. We're reading about more every day because as people lose Medicaid, the hospitals that depended on reimbursements from Medicaid and don't have a general fund or a private philanthropy or another resource are going to have to either, or both, cut services or increase rates for patients that can pay. So let me talk about what happens when people lose access. Not very interesting, I forgot about that slide. But that's some more people that we treat, some good stats. I think I shared some of them. So have a quick read and on we move. Nope, we'll get to that in a minute. What happens when people lose access to Medicaid? This explains how they're going to lose it. I'll come to that in a minute. When people lose their health insurance, the only place that they can access health care is at an emergency room. So what we're in emergency rooms, private, public, for-profit, nonprofit, are required to provide life-saving treatment for anybody that walks in to their hospital, or anyone who arrives, ambulance or walk-in. They cannot be turned away, so what we are going to see is more people going to emergency rooms for treatment, either because the early issue that could have been taken care of with preventative care with a primary care doctor, with a specialist, has gotten to an emergent level, or something that is not necessarily an emergency, but this is where somebody is coming to get care. This will create longer waits for anyone who uses any emergency room. And remember that our county hospital is seeing the bulk of the trauma cases. And again, what private hospitals can do if they are seeing more, providing more care that is uncompensated, is again, reduce some of their services or raise rates, raise the charges for people with commercial insurance. And then of course what we will see are private insurance premiums increasing in the very, very near future. The way that this is working is that the complexity of demonstrating your eligibility for Medicaid is ramping up dramatically. If they're called work requirements, if the real goal was to make sure that everybody who's currently on Medicaid who should be working is working, there would be a very small drop-off. The only way you get to a huge drop-off is to take people that are otherwise eligible, but find that there is something in the re-signing up twice a year, in the documentation that they need, in the language access, in other ways that will have them push off of the rolls. There are 2 states that have tried this, Arkansas and New Hampshire. Both were failed attempts. The majority of people that lost coverage were people who met all of the eligibility requirements, and certainly employment didn't come to surge. I just broke down some of the emergency call data in District 4, since this is where we are. D6. Emergency calls, 69% are going to a county hospital. San Jose District 1 is where Rosemary Kume is the council member, and then Santa Clara and Campbell's data. I've got 3 slides from a presentation that EMS, the ambulance service organization, made to a committee last week, a committee meeting that I sat on, and they played out a scenario for us called What If O'Connor Hospital Closes? O'Connor is not a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. It's a garden variety emergency room. They saw 14,000 ambulance deliveries last year. And the map shows where in the county they came from. If we were to lose the emergency room at O'Connor, there's no hospital that can absorb 14,000 more ambulance drop-offs, or even a significant portion of ambulance drop-offs. The 6 private hospitals in our community are deeply alarmed and regularly communicating with us, because they know if the county hospitals contract or close any of our services, that will increase the burden on their hospitals for, frankly, a patient population that they are not eager to serve. This was a slide that, I don't know if you can read them, I'm so sorry, I don't want to stand and read slides to you. But this is from the EMS presentation. They talked about existing challenges and then the things that are exacerbated by HR 1, and what they note is Medi-Cal coverage reductions will increase the number of uninsured clients, so 10% collection rate. Tariffs, of course, are increasing medical supplies. Medicaid revenue losses will weaken the financial model supporting EMS. Limiting access to primary and preventative care increases reliance on emergency care. Emergency response times will be slower because emergency rooms will be more crowded, and an ambulance, of course, can't drop somebody at the door. They have to wait until a bed is available. And as of today, again, before any of these impacts really set in, Santa Clara County has the 2nd lowest ratio in the state of emergency room beds per capita. Only San Mateo has fewer emergency beds per capita. So the notion that we could do just fine with fewer hospitals in our community, I think is really a misconception. And again, this isn't, as the county system has grown in inverse proportion to private for-profit sector pulling out and saying this is too expensive. There aren't other providers that have wanted to do this work, and certainly now, in light of HR 1, if we wanted to unload 1 or more of these hospitals, there's not a buyer that would keep them as a hospital open to everyone regardless of ability to pay. just say a little bit about the broader impacts of HR1. Talked, of course, about longer waits in emergency rooms, slower ambulance times, very likely increased commercial insurance premiums. We're also looking at a community, and this is true nationally, overall, that is sicker, that has more infectious, untreated disease, more viruses, more bacteria. If you think about folks, particularly in the retail and hospitality industry, where many of us may eat, shop, get a coffee, get a meal, do some kind of transaction, folks that do not have access to health insurance, who do not have health insurance, are likely to be sicker. We're also going to see, and it's not part of my presentation, but I can talk about it if you're interested, the changes coming to covered California mean that another whole chunk of people may either lose or choose not to pay for that commercial insurance once the federal subsidies go. So we're looking at a substantial part of the population nationally losing access to health insurance, and we have both public health experts and financial experts who are talking about national higher mortality rates, overall depressed states of health, and certainly, of course, more people being pushed into homelessness, whether it's because of medical debt or lack of access to food support, which forces them to spend more of the little money that they do have accessing food and other things that safety net services have on them now. And if you have medical, when you get treated in an emergency room, you won't be turned away, but you will get a bill. And if the person gets a bill from Stanford and the bill isn't paid, I don't need to pick on Stanford, choose your private hospital, that debt gets reported on your credit if you don't pay it, making it harder for you to purchase other things, making it harder for you to get that next lease signed because you have this debt. I think that's good there. All right, so what are we doing about that? The size of the hole, it's not $1 billion in the first year, but it is growing in the next couple of years to $1 billion, and then $1 billion every year thereafter that this bill continues to be in place. Unlike the federal government, we cannot run a deficit. So we have to balance our budget on June 30th. Also, unlike the federal government, we cannot print money. So you are going to see drastic and dramatic changes to county services as a result of needing to close this growing to $1 billion gap. We have already asked our health and hospital system to come back in March with $200 million, $200 to $500 million in cuts. I'm not talking about increased efficiencies. I'm not talking about right sizing, consolidating. That you can do with smaller deficits, with structural deficits. What we're going to be doing is pulling money out of programs and services that residents want, that are actually having positive impact, that are meeting people's needs. And aside from cutting things, the only place that we can pull money to backfill is from our general fund, that local property tax that I mentioned at the beginning. And what's funded in our general fund? The entire public safety system, the sheriff's office, the jail, the district attorney, the public defender, pretrial services, and reentry are funded from the general fund. The huge ramp up we've done over the last 3 years in mental health and substance use disorder services has been general fund. We have about this much in Medicaid, about that much in state funding, and now we've been adding general funds to be able to provide the services again that so much of the community has said are important. So, dramatic things in our own house. We're leading a coordinated advocacy effort with all of the public hospitals, the California Association of Public Hospitals, the 14 large urban counties that own and operate at least one hospital, and the universities that own public hospitals. We are working together to aggressively advocate with both the legislature, hello Gail, and the governor for some protections for public hospitals. Public hospitals make up only 6% of the state hospital system, but we serve more than 50%, but we take care of more than 50% of the traumas and train more than 50% of all practicing physicians. You don't want your public hospitals and trauma centers to be unavailable or inconvenient. So that's the second. And the third, of course, is Measure A. Maybe most of you have already turned in your ballots, but Measure A is one of 3 items on this special ballot. It is a 5-year, 5/8 of 1 cent sales tax, general tax, that, let me say a little bit about each of those pieces. Why is it a sales tax? Because that's the only tool that the county is authorized to use that can impact all 15 cities. We can do a parcel tax, we can do other things in unincorporated that would not yield the kind of funding that we need to help us keep our healthcare system operating and, to the extent possible, keep our current programs that are funded by the general fund funded at close to their level. That is why a sales tax. Sales taxes, as you probably know, do not accrue to groceries, rent, childcare, education, or ironically, healthcare. The 5/8 cent tax amounts to about $6.20-something per $1,000 of taxable goods. Why 5 years? Because we know that a couple of reasons. First of all, we know that trust in government is very low right now, and the audacity of asking for a tax, which we need right now, in perpetuity, I think is just too much to bear. We believe, and we are betting, and it's a risky bet, that what Trump has proposed and what H.R. 1 sets out to do over a decade cannot hold. The level of sickness and death that are widely predicted to happen across the country cannot stand. The level of poverty and harm at some point, I don't know how bad it has to get. Estimates are maybe 5 or 6 years before either a new administration comes in or the current one says, okay, maybe we do have to make sure that so many people aren't dying on our streets. So 5 years. General tax, it has a 50% pass approval, whereas a special tax has a 2/3, which is kind of a quick side note. The first thing people ask about a general tax is, well, how do you know we're going to spend it on what you want? I'll come back to that, on what you say you're going to spend it on. Yet, when you have a special tax that requires you to spend it on A, B, C, and D, you need a higher threshold. Just in case legislators want to reverse anything, I would think that a general tax should have to require 2/3 and a special tax 1/2. Nonetheless, here we are today. We put into the ballot language a commitment to create an independent audit advisory committee. This is very unusual for a general tax because, as you know, we can legally spend a general tax in any way we like. We could build a ballroom. We could invest in a stadium. The size of our hole is so large, $1 billion in the core work that counties do, these social safety net services, and a sales tax would cover 1/3, $330 million. There is not a universe where we would spend this money on something other than the core of our work. And I have asked folks who have been concerned about that to just maybe give me examples of things that we would spend it on that would be concerning, I suppose, but other than healthcare, food access, safety net services, other things that are directly impacted by HR 1. Most of our budget is very tightly controlled and mandated and has separate funding streams. Even, for example, our parks have their own funding stream, which is not general funds. The libraries, the fire district, lots of things where maybe in a city you might think, well, can't we pull from here or there? Our budget is very, very, very restricted. So those are the three things that we're doing. And I've been saying that, you know, things are going to be extraordinarily hard. If Measure A passes next week, they will be slightly less hard. Measure A is important, but it is by no means a silver bullet to fix all of our ills. I think that's all I have to say about the impacts of HR 1. I have things to say about it every day, all the time. But tell me what you're interested in, concerned about, what questions you have about the impacts to HR 1, the impacts to our county from HR 1.
I got about 20 questions, but I'll try one.
And you also have regular access, so pick one.
All right, so let's go to just this item, this tax that was put on the ballot with 24 hours notice.
Mm-hmm.
In San Jose, you have to do 10 to 14 days for sunshine transparency to let the public know.
Yeah.
The county, approximately 24 hours before publishes the agenda. However, the county had been working on this for months. And even to the fact that the legislation was passed 2 years ago to enable the 5 cent sales tax. So if the county was working with various interest groups behind the scenes for months, why did they only put the agenda 24 hours before?
So first of all, I think agendas come out 72 hours before.
This agenda was not out, it was out
So
one
it
day.
was I can't remember the timing on that. Whatever it was certainly in legal compliance. But we have had, let me address the other parts. We have had that authority to do the 5 cent sales tax for a couple of years. Didn't see the need for it in 2024. I frankly had my eye on it because I was hoping to do something with childcare. When HR 1 passed, that created an emergency that didn't exist on July 3rd. Even a week before HR 1 passed, when it was still with the House, before it went to the Senate, the cuts to Medicaid were not nearly so dramatic. So we've been planning all kinds of scenarios. I mean, we've had to address a structural budget deficit for the last couple of years. We've had to balance because property tax is growing more slowly than expenses. So we've already been doing that. But it was really only when we saw how deep the Medicaid cuts were going to be on July 4th. The board was on recess. We came back early before our regular August meeting, had a special meeting in order to make the deadline for inclusion on the special ballot. You normally cannot put a sales tax on an off-cycle ballot unless there is a fiscal emergency. The passage of HR 1 created that emergency, which emergency was affirmed by the courts, and we did it quickly. Normally, and when we had that special ballot because of the assessor's race, that was almost fortuitous. We were very grumpy that the assessor resigned halfway through his term, and as it turned out, this turned out to be something that was helpful to us. Many other counties were not able to act that quickly to try to make up for some of that loss. If we had waited until 2026, the money wouldn't come in until mid-2027, by which the last of the HR 1 implementation pieces would be in effect, and we would have had to close, perhaps unnecessarily, significant programs. And as you know, and if you're following the legislation that Schiff and, what's his name? From Glen County, not is it Kylie? The other Republican. I can't remember his name, but anyway, they're trying to reopen a hospital that is closed. You can't just turn lights back on. Everybody has left. The license is lapsed. What? you'll think of it and tell me. Anyway, normally as well, I'm saying normally a lot because this is not normal, when you're going to impose a tax, you want to have lots of notice and lots of time for impact, for input, how do people want to spend it, all 15 cities want to know, well, what are we getting? We had nothing to offer anybody, nothing, other than saying, we are trying to keep emergency rooms open, we are trying to make sure ambulances run on time. We don't have any new spending to do something for San Jose or for Mountain View or for Gilroy. So that period that usually precedes a tax wasn't going to be helpful to us there. So we are doing the best that we can, again, in a situation where local government should in no way be expected to make up for federal government turning its back on us at the scale that they are. We're doing this little piece. Counties up and down the state are watching us. For successful, I think you will see many more counties doing just this next year, or closing hospitals, because those are really the options.
I want to know other people feel that.
Thanks. Just want to go back to something you said, a couple of things you said earlier. That state and local governments have become so dependent on this money. And the other thing is that trust in government and politicians is at an all-time low. We've experienced that here in San Jose. Measure E was passed as a tax on real estate sales that was going to create permanent housing, and it was going to have an advisory committee. Not too long ago, I had two council persons in here who laughed at me when a couple of us brought up the advisory committee. And that money ended up being used to offset the city's budget deficit.
It actually was used to, it was invested 90% in temporary shelters, as opposed to permanent housing that it was supposed to be for. But yeah, and that's raised all the time. Look what San Jose did, so thank you very much for that.
And we have with this, you say there's going to be an advisory committee that's going to make sure that the money is spent where you say it's going to be spent. But this weekend we got glossy mailers from all of the county unions saying that they were going to experience cuts. And we have our mayor who had been negotiating, trying to get county to provide services to the homeless, and the county said, well, we can't afford to do that. The mayor comes out in support of Measure A, all of a sudden, he supports Measure A, and the county says, we're going to start
Let me
providing
give you
that.
some, just want to correct the record on a few. The things that we're doing with San Jose, we never said we couldn't afford. These are things that we have wanted to do for years. What we won't do and continue to say no to is do cost sharing for all of the temporary shelters, because we believe that there's been an overinvestment in that particular level. There's no income revenue stream there, and it's just extraordinarily expensive and could theoretically bankrupt the city. So, yes, I mean, mayor likes to do what he likes to do, so yes.
So how do we?
No, you're right.
This is a 5-year. It expires in 5 years.
Yeah.
Over 5 years, the county is going to grow dependent on that money, and it's going to just get built into budget. And then in 5 years, we're going to get hit with another tax increase.
So let me come back to the public safety people, and then we'll do this first. Yes, I mean, everybody gets dependent on money that they have. It's hard to lose. The true hope is that the Medicaid and the other resources will become available again. And it's not that we are dependent on them, because that suggests that we should be independent, and we're not. Local government should not be responsible for funding Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP. We have some matches, but to say that we've been dependent on it, I think is misleading. That is not our responsibility. So will we become dependent on these dollars? I mean, yes, But if Medicaid comes back, it will be harder to argue that it should be continued, and 5 years means 5 years. And the voters would be asked again, presumably, do you want to continue this Measure A? It's no new income, it's blah, 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 or no new revenue. Yeah, that's possible. I mean, you can't say, no, that would never happen. But the money is needed now, and the 5 years was a very deliberate choice. The public safety piece is interesting because, as I said, that's all funded by the general fund. So those folks are very afraid that we're going to pull, which we will, money from their departments to backfill the Medicaid. Because in those departments, we do more than we are mandated to do. We have to backfill the healthcare. Our primary mandate, a significant mandate of county government is to provide healthcare to the indigent, with and without insurance. And we are required to treat anybody that walks into our hospitals. We can't control that, we can't limit it. We can't tell people from San Benito County who are going to be coming more to St. Louis because Hazel Hawkins is closed and our other hospitals closed. We can't tell them not to come. So we have no control over the number of people that are coming to us. But we do have an obligation, if we're going to keep those doors open, to pay the doctors, the nurses, the custodians, the groundskeepers, all of the groundskeepers, we have lawnmower guys, to pay to keep those services open and operating. And to the extent that we close them, one, again, higher levels of sickness, higher mortality. Two, bigger burden on the private hospitals. I'm not here to save the private hospitals from themselves, but we see what private hospitals do when they don't feel that they're making money. They close and walk away. So thank you. Yeah, they're good questions and all super fair.
You mentioned that the money is from the federal government and that you're really a pass-through. Can you, so I mean, to me, when I hear pass-through, you're just distributing money. What kind of audits or check and balances do you do to make sure it's taxpayers' money? And I hope you don't look at it as, well, it's federal money, it's not really, it's all of our money.
No. So I mush them together, so let me separate. Pass-through would be things like CalFresh, Women, Infant, and Children funding, money that we don't directly hold, but goes through us to the eligible individuals, and those are audited by the state government, by the federal government, and we have to report how they are spent and what our error rate is. The national error rate for SNAP is around 10%. Which seems pretty high to me. We're right around that too. I think we're at 10.1. We need to get that obviously down. But yes, there is auditing and monitoring. Medicaid goes for the patient's benefit, but because we are operating the hospital, we get that reimbursement on behalf of that patient so that we can continue to provide care. When we purchase hospitals, thank you. I mean, obviously we spend money to purchase them, but you should know we didn't ask voters for higher taxes to purchase the hospitals. We didn't even go into debt for them. And part of the reason that those transactions made sense was because there were these enormous revenue streams, that $2.5 billion in Medicaid coming to us, that we had no good reason to assume was going to change. So regional, since we bought it, we have already doubled the daily capacity at that hospital. We were able to reopen labor and delivery. We closed it at O'Connor. We're going to work very hard at being incredibly efficient with each of the 4 sites and how we are spending that money. But there's going to be so much less of it.
When you, I mean, the county, I've been here my whole life, and I noticed house prices just soaring, right? Which means property taxes are soaring, which means your budget has increased significantly over the last 10 years,
Right.
thanks to Silicon Valley, which pays big bucks, and therefore people can afford to pay the $2 million for the houses. Have you looked at how does that play in, and wouldn't that offset? Why do we continue to need more money when there's troves of it coming into the county coffers?
So there are troves of money. There are also more people experiencing homelessness in our city than almost anywhere else in the county. 1 in 2 children are Medicaid eligible, food stamp eligible. We also have deep poverty, so we have a high need for services. It is the dramatic wealth in our community that has pushed the cost of housing and general cost of living so high that people who really should be middle class or working class are, relatively speaking, very poor here and qualify for services that we need to provide. The budget grew most dramatically. Hang on one second there. With each hospital purchase. But remember that revenue grew also with each hospital purchase. More employees, more property to take care of. Oh, I'm boring people in there leaving. Good night. That's all right. Yes, so that has been responsible most significantly in the last 5 years for the budget growth, has been the purchase of the hospitals. Again, saving jobs, bringing millions, literally of dollars of income to the community. So looking at both sides is really important. The gap, the income gap in this region is enormous. It's enormous, and I continue to think that it's untenable, but we still seem to be moving along. Thank you. Yeah,
Hi there. I just want to thank you actually for all that you're doing and for being out here to take the hard questions and do this. I know as a life, born and raised in San Jose, deeply invested in the Little Glen community, I am so grateful you're doing what you're doing as an elected official to use your power to make sure that we're a community that is taking care of each other. And I really appreciate that there's a time limit on this, so that there's those pieces in place so that that the voters will have the right to say yes November 4th or no November 4th, and 5 years later, again, that it's not this forever thing. What has happened is just terrifying, and so unprecedented. I think one of the best things I've gotten from one of your previous presentations is to vote early, because I'm not getting those really crazy glossy mailers that are just filled with all these misinformation.
I'll share that. What Carla's referencing is, regardless of how you vote, and I am not in my advocacy mode, but regardless of how you vote, when the registrar receives and records that your vote has been received, you come off of all candidates and measures, mailing lists and phone lists, because those campaigns don't want to waste money on somebody who has already voted. So now it's already late, but if you want the mail to stop and you want the robocalls or the text to stop, send in your ballot.
Yeah, I appreciate that too.
Well, there's clearly no campaign
Can you do
against
the last one? Sorry, the last question, because someone else had a question that hasn't asked yet.
Do you want to go?
No. Okay.
So yeah, in this case, there's absolutely no funded opposition to Measure A, so there's no misleading flyers in the mail. But I guess, Jose, you're right, property tax revenues have grown immensely. The county's last year's collection was $2.65 billion, massive more than the city of San Jose's property tax revenues. And then I find the issue of only doing a regressive sales tax as the only option. When I look at my annual property tax statement, I have a property tax that goes to the county. It's $300 million a year for a specific line item for employee pensions. So the reality is the county chose the sales tax because it polled better, because they felt that putting a property tax would not be supported. But ultimately, it's a regressive tax. And so my concerns are transparency and governance. So when you talk about an advisory committee, if you look at the prior property tax increase for subsidized housing, and you look at the roster of that advisory committee, it's all people that had a stake in the game. Building trades, affordable housing developers. So if you're gonna do an advisory committee, you really need someone who's independent and doesn't have money interests in the outcome for it to really be truly advisory.
Sure, I think that's very fair, and Larry Stone led the Measure A, the 2016 General Obligation Bond, $950 million bond. He led that. I certainly agree that there should be independent members on it, and all of their meetings are public, their records that they share are public, so there are opportunities to, ask questions if you feel something is biased, but it should certainly all be transparent, yes.
Okay, Mary?
I like that, an advisory committee with real people on it. One thing I just wanted to touch on, since you've talked about O'Connor Hospital quite a bit tonight, my dad was chief of staff there. He was an OBGYN, so labor and delivery was close and near to me. He actually delivered me. You don't hear about that very often. My brother was also an anesthesiologist, and my husband was on the board. So all three, my father, my brother, and my husband, were in the room when O'Connor Hospital was being sold.
The first time or the second, Daughters of Charity, or very
Daughters of Charity,
yeah.
first time. They did have a buyer that came in. It was a doctor who was no longer practicing. He had lots of money, lots of interest. He came up with the right amount of money, and Kamala Harris, who was our AG at the time, decided to say no sale. So it was purely political. I want to clarify that for everybody in here so you know what's going on behind the scenes. That's what happened. So they did have a buyer.
This is from Daughters of Charity to that ended up selling to Verity.
Correct. And she said, she was our AG at the time, and said, nope, I'm going to go with Verity. It went belly up before it even took off, basically. That other buyer that my brother brought in tried to come back in, and the county said no.
How would the county have the ability to say no?
Because the county was involved with Verity at some point. I'm not gonna get into the weeds of that, but it was pure political, it was a union thing. The union wouldn't approve, it was a huge mess. So when you bring politics into, sports, say, or medicine, or anything like that, there's always a backstory, and I want everybody to think about that when we're sitting here tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that, right? It's hard to fathom that we had. But what I do know is that we had a big fight with Javier Becerra, who was the Attorney General when we were trying to buy O'Connor in St. Louis. He did not want us to be able to buy the hospital. And we were buying a charity hospital for Medicaid patients, and we really had to fight on that. So that piece surprises me. It doesn't all fit, but everything right? It seems like everything has some political element and some opportunity. It's crazy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
We have one more question over here.
There is clearly a lot of mistrust in the management of the money in the current, whoever's running this thing. I have been knocking door to door, asking people how they feel, because I want to know. And I have 3 grown children married with 5 grandchildren now, and I don't want to move.
Lucky.
So, I historically voted for the schools, for everything. Historically voted for the transportation. Where is it? The test scores are not up. Some things are passing that I don't know how they passed. Like 7-story buildings or whatever. I don't know. And this SB6 and SB9 that we can bypass the zoning. Parental rights being taken out of the school. There are things like that, 81955, I think it's called. I have stood up at some council meetings and asked for this voters' choice thing. I don't think it's fair. The 50, using Trump hate to get people to give away their power on voting. I don't trust this either. And I don't know how anybody can. Where's the transportation system? So I don't really have a question, but I just, only 2% of the lottery money is going to the schools. Why?
I can't answer most of that, but I appreciate your sharing your perspective. I want to just make one quick note, because I know that the opposition statement to Measure A does go on and on about transportation, but just to be clear, the county government budget does not include the VTA or transit. I realize this isn't an answer to all of your questions, but just want to clarify that we have 2 members of our Board of Supervisors that sit on the multi-jurisdictional VTA, but that's not our budget, and I am proud of and stand behind the way our county allocates and spends money. There's for sure room for improvement. And you'll see both improvement and dramatic declines in services. But thank you again, I hear you.
Supervisor, I want to thank you for staying late and answering all our questions and addressing the concerns. I really appreciate everybody.
We're glad to do it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for hanging on to this way.
All right, coming up in the community, we have trick-or-treating Thursday. I need 1 or 2 or 3 more people to help pass out trick-or-treat bags as part of the WIllow Glen Neighborhood Association, so come see me afterwards if you're willing to help out. The cleanup at Ellenberg and Kerner is coming up November 1st. That's what Councilmember Mulcahy talked about. And then our next community meeting here, Monday, November 17th, we're going to have Trust from Santa Clara County come and give us a talk about their services. And we're also going to have Recycle Right from San Jose talking to us about recycling. So thank you everybody for coming. If you're not a member, please join and have a nice night.